What's good, YouTube? Welcome back. Today it is the LazyDaze channel and we're back at it again with some more history reaction for you guys today, and we have some more epic history TV's content for you, and we're staying on the Napoleonic War series for you, and it's Napoleon's invasion of Russia 1812. We really enjoy his the content over on this channel. If you haven't already, please head over to his page. A link will be in the description box down below. We're really enjoying this series in particular. Just watched the last episode, the Salamans. But now obviously Napoleon's decided to take on two fronts, so I'm looking forward to seeing what happens.
I'm looking forward to see how bad it goes in Russia for him, man.
Exactly.
It's not going to go well.
If you have any more suggestions, please drop them in the comment box down below. If you're liking our content, then like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and we're just going to jump straight into this one.
Let's do this. One must never ask more from fortune than she can grant.
Napoleon Bonaparte.
Russia, 1812. Napoleon invades his former ally with the largest army Europe has ever seen. But for the French Emperor, the decisive blow remains frustratingly beyond reach. Russia's resilience is unlike anything he's ever encountered.
Russia's winter is unlike anything else
and
as
winter closes in,
there you go.
his army begins the most infamous retreat in history.
The second to last picture looked like they were worried, man. Every one of them cuddled up
In
like...
1807, following his defeat of the Russian army at Friedland, Napoleon had travelled to Tilsit to meet the Russian Emperor Alexander. During their celebrated encounter, the two emperors formed a friendship and made an alliance. But it was not to last. Over the next 5 years, relations between France and Russia cooled dramatically. The Russians were irritated by Napoleon's creation of a Duchy of Warsaw in Poland, which they regarded as meddling in their own front yard.
Yeah, it's a bit close.
They feared it would lead to the return of a fully fledged Polish state, a traditional thorn in Russia's side.
I mean, they should have
Then
their
there
own
was
state.
Napoleon's offer to marry Alexander's sister, Grand Duchess Anna Pavlovna, to cement their alliance. But the Romanovs hated the idea, and after a year of Russian prevarication, Napoleon married Marie-Louise, daughter of the Austrian emperor, instead.
He had so many women on the go.
I think
Later
he did.
that year, Napoleon broke a guarantee made at Tilsit and annexed the Duchy of Oldenburg, ruled by Alexander's sister's father-in-law. Worst of all was the fallout over the continental system, Napoleon's not very effective economic blockade against Britain, designed to cripple his most steadfast enemy. Alexander had agreed to join the continental system at Tilsit, but it was hugely unpopular in Russia and ruinous to her finances during a period of economic crisis.
Yeah, they're big.
When Napoleon found out that Russia was flouting the rules of the system and had resumed
That's
an
that armour
illicit
column
trade
tank
with
because
Britain,
of Liz.
he was furious.
Cheers, Liz.
With both
It's
emperors
crying now.
accusing the other of bad faith, their two countries began
Oh,
preparing for war.
you horrible, horrible person.
This video
At Tilsit, Russia swore an eternal alliance with France. Now she breaks her oaths. Does she believe in degenerate? Are we no longer the soldiers of Austerlitz? Napoleon's bulletin to the Grand Armée, 22nd of June, 1812.
Napoleon knew an invasion of Russia was a massive undertaking, especially as he still had an unfinished war in Spain that was tying down more than 200,000 troops.
Should have left Russia alone.
Nevertheless, in 1811, he
Surely take that Grand Armée to Spain, sort that issue out,
Yeah.
and then go Russia.
Yeah.
began to assemble the largest army Europe had ever seen. Around 600,000 men, though less than half of them were French.
Less than half?
The rest came from allied states across Europe. There was a Polish corps from the Duchy of Warsaw, led by Prince Poniatowski. a corps from each of the German kingdoms of Saxony, Westphalia and Bavaria, from the Kingdom of Italy, as well as Swiss, Dutch, Croat, Spanish and Portuguese units scattered throughout the army. There were even contingents from Prussia and Austria, France's recent enemies, now uneasy allies. Some of these allied troops, such as the Poles and Germans, were as reliable as their French counterparts. Others were very inexperienced, or like the Prussians and Austrians, reluctant to be there at all. This gigantic formation was deployed in 3 armies. The main force under Napoleon himself, another led by his stepson, Eugene, and a third led by his younger brother, Jérôme.
Even with that size, he's still dividing it up.
Neither of these two were experienced commanders. Though one would distinguish himself on campaign, the other would not.
Who's who?
On their left flank, Marshal MacDonald led 10th Corps with a large Prussian contingent, while the right flank was guarded by General Schwarzenberg's Austrian Corps. Another 100,000 troops were in reserve, including Marshal Victor's 9th Corps. Initially, the Russians only had 220,000 men to face this juggernaut, organized into Barclay de Tolly's 1st Army, Prince Bagration's 2nd Army, and General Tomasov's 3rd Army.
They went head on.
They would be outnumbered 2 to 1. But in the run-up to war, Russia scored 2 crucial diplomatic triumphs. Sweden had been at war with Russia just 3 years earlier, a conflict which cost her Finland. By a curious turn of events, Sweden was now ruled by Napoleon's ex-marshal Bernadotte. But after Napoleon occupied Swedish Pomerania without warning, a furious Bernadotte promised Russia that Sweden would remain neutral. Meanwhile, a peace treaty with the Ottoman Empire ended Russia's 6-year war against its southern rival.
Russia's smart.
Yeah,
These
they're literally
two
like,
agreements
no,
secured Russia's flanks from any strategic threat, and freed up troops to face Napoleon's invasion.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
That's a very good idea.
Shame Napoleon didn't do that with France. Spain. I am about to embark on the greatest and most difficult enterprise I have ever attempted, but what has been begun must be carried through. Napoleon to the prefect of Paris police. There we go.
Yes.
Just gonna move on.
It's all good.
On the 24th of June 1812, French troops began crossing the Neman River into Russian territory. The army was so large, the crossing took 5 days.
5 days.
Napoleon's plan was to attack north of the
people.
impassable Pripet marshes.
It's a small bridge.
To defeat Barclay's army, while Jérôme pinned Bagration in place. French forces would then swing south to trap Bagration. Napoleon expected the campaign to be over in 5 weeks. But the sheer size of the French army convinced the cautious Barclay that retreat was his only option. Prince Bagration, a much more aggressive commander by instinct, and often Barclay's fierce critic, was forced to agree.
So they retreated.
As they withdrew, they burned villages and crops, part of a scorched earth strategy.
It is a very good idea, but it really does damage.
4 days, Napoleon had reached Vilnius, but Barclay was gone. To the south, Jérôme failed to pin down Bagration. So when Davout's 1st Corps swung southeast to trap him, he'd already withdrawn to safety. Napoleon's younger brother was out of his depth, stung by the Emperor's criticism, humiliated when his troops were put under Marshal Davout's command. He resigned his post and returned to Westphalia.
I guess
the campaign was already beginning to expose serious flaws in Napoleon's plan.
Could have been
Knowing his troops would struggle to live off the land
run.
in this impoverished region, he'd organized huge supply depots and transport units to feed the army.
So he's thinking ahead.
But wagons rolled slowly along Russia's bad roads, which were turned to rivers of mud by summer thunderstorms. The army had to make frequent stops to allow its supplies to catch up. Bad news for Napoleon's plan to catch the Russians, but a much-needed relief for the many thousands of young conscripts in his army, not used to hard marches day after day. Many were soon dropping out with exhaustion. Others deserted.
That's so
There were also huge
upsetting.
problems of command and control over a vast multinational...
Problem with conscripts, do you know what I mean? Forcing people to work, like, be in your army.
Yeah.
Like, that is the problem, but you need that type of...
If you're going to go for an invasion, you need
Well,
the strength.
if you're
you
going to
need
get
the numbers.
600,000 men, then yeah,
Yeah.
you need to do conscripts. It's
Under
just,
half are actually French.
It's insane.
It's crazy.
national army that was 3 times bigger than any Napoleon had commanded before. La Grande Armée, once famed for its speed of maneuver, had become a lumbering beast. After a pause to rest and regroup at Vilnius, Napoleon resumed his advance.
See, he's
Barclay
regrouping. That's
continued
good.
his retreat to Vitebsk, where he hoped Bagration's second army would be able to join him. But Davout blocked Bagration's path at Sultanovka, forcing him to make for Smolensk instead.
Okay.
At Vitebsk, Napoleon clashed with Barclay's rearguard, but once more the Russians escaped, after setting fire to all the stores they couldn't take with them. Meanwhile, 300 miles away, on Napoleon's southern flank, Russian Third Army attacked and defeated the Saxon 7th Corps,
Oh no.
forcing Napoleon to divert Schwarzenberg's Austrian Corps to their aid. By the end of July, Napoleon had advanced 250 miles into Russia, much further than he'd planned. And the long marches in
Yeah.
extreme summer heat continued to
So
take
I'm
a heavy
assuming-
toll on...
I'm assuming he just wanted decisive victory.
He
wanted
wanted this done in 5 weeks.
Yeah, so like he was hoping that the first place he took, they were there, and he would be able to defeat the
Yeah,
army
and
get it.
his men could actually get to what they were like the
Yeah, and
objective.
they just keep
yeah.
retreating and just going, no, we're
Just
gonna wait.
getting
We're just
away.
gonna wait. We're just gonna wait. Yeah, it's insane.
Him going in too far is really gonna affect it.
Yeah.
his men. Without fighting a major battle, the army had already suffered 20% casualties.
Wow.
From exhaustion and illness, particularly typhus and dysentery. The army had entered Russia with 250,000 horses, but they were now dying at a rate of 1,000 every day from exhaustion and lack of fodder.
Oh my
It
god.
wasn't just cavalry horses that were dying, but the very horses that were supposed to haul the army's transport wagons, making a bad situation
When you're hungry,
worse.
you just don't think. You just want to eat.
This crisis in horsepower came just as the French light cavalry, Napoleon's eyes and ears, met their match in Russia's Cossacks.
Oh. If Napoleon had Cossacks in his army, he would have been Emperor of China long ago.
Ooh, they
Cossack
must-
prisoner interviewed by Napoleon.
Mate, these must be some intense horsemen.
These have got to be the baddest of the bad.
Cossacks, self-reliant, proud, ruthless, and superb horsemen, didn't play by the same rules as other European cavalry.
Okay.
Even his horse in that painting
Every
looks
day
like he's
they
got
shadowed
muscles.
Napoleon's army, swooping in whenever they saw an easy target, but melting away into the forests if they were attacked by a stronger force.
They're so smart. Pick them off.
Yeah.
Cossacks, as well as Russian partisans, made hit-and-run attacks on French supply lines and depots, forcing Napoleon to divert thousands of troops to their defense. Alongside Russian
Mate,
regular light
that's a good
cavalry,
tactic as well.
they also prevented French patrols from carrying out reconnaissance, which meant that Napoleon often lacked good information about roads or the enemy.
That. Not being able to know where you're going, how good the roads are, what routes to take.
Your scouts just keep on getting hit.
Right, your scouts keep on getting hit, your storage supplies keep getting hit, and you need those most of all because you're in somewhere else than that.
And you've gone too far.
And
you've gone further than you thought.
They're doing scorched earth tactics, so
Yeah.
your supplies are even more important.
Back it up. Get out of there.
Ooh.
He's not thinking right.
Regular light cavalry. They also prevented French patrols from carrying out reconnaissance, which meant that Napoleon often lacked good information about roads or the enemy's whereabouts. Napoleon stayed 16 days at Vitebsk, resting his troops and considering his options. Among his many mounting concerns was the security of his long, exposed flanks. But at Vitebsk, he received news that Schwarzenberg had defeated the Russians at Gorodezhna.
Nice.
A week later at Polotsk, a French Bavarian force fought Wittgenstein's Russian First Corps to a standstill. Napoleon's flanks were secure for now. Although his main force had been reduced to less than half its original strength, Napoleon decided to push on to Smolensk and try to force the Russians into a decisive battle for the city.
How is he still going?
Why?
Barclay was indeed under pressure to give battle from fellow commander Prince Bagration and Emperor Alexander in St. Petersburg. The army's morale and Russia's honor required it, they told him.
Fair.
Okay.
With the First and Second Russian armies finally linking up near Smolensk, Barclay decided to attack Napoleon's army, which he believed was concentrated around Rudnya. The offensive was led by General Platov's Cossacks, who surprised a French cavalry division at Inkova. But alarmed by false reports that Eugene's Fourth Corps was outflanking him to the north, Barclay called off the attack. Napoleon, reassured that Barclay's offensive posed no real threat, began a grand outflanking move to the south to take Smolensk and cut off the Russian retreat.
Yeah,
the so-called Smolensk maneuver was Napoleon at his best, using Murat's cavalry to screen his movements and keep Barclay in the dark. The Emperor reached the Dnieper on the evening of the 13th of August. His engineers quickly threw up 4 pontoon bridges. By dawn the next day, his army was across. Marshal Davout led a second column across the river at Orsha. But a single Russian division, the 27th, fought a heroic fighting retreat from Krasny, delaying the French advance, buying time for Bagration to reinforce the Smolensk garrison.
It's not good for
the
Napoleon.
chance for a surprise assault on the city was lost. And as the Russian army began to pull back, Napoleon displayed an uncharacteristic lack of urgency, even halting the army for a parade to mark his 43rd birthday. When the main attack on Smolensk began 2 days later.
So he just stopped for a day?
He's delayed the entire army.
Napoleon
I think he
displayed
said,
an uncharacteristic
was it a week or a
lack of
day?
urgency, even halting the army for a parade to mark his 43rd.
It must have been just a day then.
It must have just been a day.
So
you can have a parade on your 43rd. Have a parade afterwards.
Have a parade to celebrate you taking Russia.
Even after this fight, have it after this fight to celebrate your birthday and winning this fight. Like why have it there? Oh, he's just getting too arrogant. That's what it seems.
Yeah, he's too arrogant now.
When the main attack on Smolensk began 2 days later, Napoleon opted for a frontal assault. 150 French guns battered the city as 3 French corps attacked its medieval fortifications. The Russians resisted bravely, but Barclay, fearing encirclement, ordered another retreat. With Smolensk in flames, the Russians began to pull out. Just as the French fought their way into the city, to scenes of utter devastation. Bagration's Second Army withdrew first. As Barclay's army followed, its rear guard was caught by Ney's Third Corps at Valutino. General Junot, commanding the Westphalian 8th Corps, had orders to cut off Barclay's retreat. But having crossed the river, he did nothing. the opportunity was lost. A furious Napoleon swore that Junot would never now win his marshal's title.
Right.
Good on him. Good on you,
The Battle of
Napoleon.
Smolensk
Should have
cost
just shot
both
the
sides
geezer.
around 10,000 casualties and destroyed one of Russia's most historic
Again, it just comes into Napoleon. One of Napoleon's biggest flaws is his generals just not doing what he's asking.
He crossed the river and then he decided not to bother. Mate, you absolute Jodsworth.
Yeah.
holy cities, but settled nothing.
Oh, idiot. Before a month is out, we shall be in Moscow. In 6 weeks, we shall have peace. Napoleon at Smolensk, 18th of August, 1812. Smolenski, is it Smolenski? It's the M that's throwing me off, the silent
After
M.
the missed chance to defeat the Russians at Smolensk, Napoleon paused once more to consider his options.
We're not good at
His men
pronunciations.
were weary and far from home, and it was already late in the campaigning season. He considered sitting out the Russian winter at Smolensk and resuming the campaign in 1813.
Okay, so that would make sense to me.
Yeah.
But now he was just 230 miles from Moscow. A century earlier, Peter the Great had moved Russia's capital to St. Petersburg.
Okay.
But Moscow remained its historic and spiritual heart, a prize for which the Russians had to fight. Napoleon, always a gambler, decided to push on. The Russians faced their own dilemma. Emperor Alexander had experienced a kind of religious epiphany that summer and rallied the Russian people to the country's defense, describing the war with Napoleon as a war to save Holy Mother Russia from the Antichrist. For months, the emperor had received conflicting advice to stand and fight or retreat. Now he decided change was needed. The cautious General Barclay kept his job, but the emperor summoned General Mikhail Kutuzov to take overall command of Russia's armies. Kutuzov had been beaten by Napoleon at Austerlitz 7 years before, but he'd since won several victories against the Ottoman Empire and was a true Russian, loved by the troops.
Nice.
Although Kutuzov agreed with Barclay's strategy of delay, he saw that constant retreats were destroying the soldiers' and the nation's morale. If Moscow was given up without a battle...
Thinking about it, right, although the retreats weren't exactly a good idea, he has got the majority of the French army like really deep in the country.
Yeah. I don't think it's a bad idea, but I do get where like
the retreat's not a good idea.
No, I think the retreat's been a good idea.
I see it as a good idea to get the enemy so far into your homeland.
So I think the retreat is a good idea because especially when you've only got 220,000, they've got 600,000, but you can't retreat forever.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got to go, right, we've weakened them enough now and we've stretched them far enough. They're so far inland, this is what we want. We now can attack them. And even if we don't get a decisive victory and they start retreating, do you know what I mean? We can start attacking them as they go back. I do think it's now time for action though. Like, it's getting a bit... They're very close to Moscow.
Yeah.
You know?
They're really close.
Yeah.
The fallout could be disastrous. And so, 70 miles west of the city, near the village of Borodino,
70 miles.
the Russian army prepared to make a stand. Europe was about to witness the bloodiest day's fighting of the Napoleonic Wars.
Mate, that looks crazy.
That looks scary.
Insane.
The artwork is so good.
That's incredible.
I'm really interested to see what happens in the next fight and the next battle. Aren't you, Joe?
That's insane.
If you guys are, then please hit the notification bell so you know when our next video is out. If you're liking our content, then please like, comment and subscribe. And we will catch you in the next video.
In a bit.